Welcome back guys to the second video of the video series. This is Arash and you're watching web server part 2. So what in the previous video we did was YUM servers and the web server or the HTTP server. Now what YUM server does is that it acts as a repository, local or offline, for the client request, and a web server, well, is basically to respond the HTTP, that is the web-based request, to the system or the clients. Now what this actually whole means, as asked to me by one of my friend, one of my fellow student, was that he was unable to understand this whole concept of servers and OS and the relations, and so he asked me that, okay, so what is this exactly servers, and how are they related to operating systems? Are they operating system based, or what is this whole chemistry, or what is this whole thing going between this servers and the OS? So before we go any further, I'd like you to know that this web server or any kind of server is nothing more of a mumbo jumbo, or is nothing kind of a rocket science thing. It's just a simple program that what does simply is to fulfill the request, send it to the system by the clients for a particular protocol, and that's what it does. Seriously, believe me, it's all what it does. So now the relation between a web server and an operating system, well, there is no real relationship between an operating system and a web server apart from just system compatibility, because a web server is nothing more than a program. Okay, so as we are talking about web servers, where there are many of other options too, as like Apache IIS for Windows. Now talking about Windows, well, IIS is completely Windows based web server. It's not available for any other platform, or it doesn't have platform independency. But when it comes to Apache or a few of other web servers, well, they are available cross platform, and hence they can be actually applied to any of the platforms. So basically the whole thing in a nutshell goes as that a web server is just a program that can be made to run on any system. It can be your system, it can be my system, it can be like any system with a good bandwidth, with a good internet, and that system can be made a server, and that's it's all. So what we studied in the last video was YUM server. I asked you to figure out the various ways how a YUM server can be configured, but since not much of a response got for the video, or you didn't showed up a uh, big of an interest, so I finally just decided to do it all of myself in this video. And before we go any further, sorry for the fumbling. Okay, so welcome for sure. Okay, so I have this whole system configured as we have left in the previous video. The HTTP server is installed. The YUM server is fully configured. Let me just test it for you. Okay, here you go. The YUM server is running. Let's check for the HTTP server. It's running. Okay, let's test it in the browser. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's finally and fully running. Cancel. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So for the YUM server, if you remember what I told you in the last video, uh, what YUM server needs is a copy of the whole packages. That's basically your Red Hat's ISO or the DVD to function properly, or to run in the most efficiently it can. So, well, like the number of ways you can put the whole disk or the whole packages together, the number of ways you can actually configure it. while in the last video what we had did was to configure it directly from the media and or by configuring it to sorry from a particular folder by copying the whole DVD to a folder and then configuring it from the folder. In this video we'll be testing a few more ways that we can configure the yum server, and the first way will be from, let's say we don't have a CD or a DVD drive, or we don't want to just lose our 3 or 4 GB of disk space. What in that case we can do? Well, we can certainly mount the ISO in a loop device to the operating system or to the system, and we can use it from there. It's not an issue. What mounting is, well, I have explained it in the previous video. You can refer to that. So let's go. I have configured the whole system and my ISO is in mnt slash hgfs slash sorry virtual shared folder. Okay, and here is my ISO. Okay, so at this particular moment of time I'd like to introduce you a new thing that's called fs tab. Now what fs tab is, it's basically the short for file system tabulation. What it does is it holds the record for all the partitions, all the file systems that has to be loaded when the system boots up, when the operating system starts. So basically we will be making an entry in here so that at the time our system boot or at the time our operating system starts, it automatically loads the ISO file in the loop device, and from there the yum server is started as configured as it should be. Okay, so let's go. The path for the fs tab is /etc/fs tab. Okay, let me maximize it. Okay, what I'm using right now is Vim. It's visually improved text editor. The short for the full name for Vim is visually improved. I don't know how that's a fully qualified name, but still it's a name. The developers have decided to keep that a name. Okay, so what I'm using Vim right now. It's a console based text editor, as I have told you in the last video. So if you wish to use it, let me tell you a few shortcuts. As if you want to make any changes in the text appearing, you have to get into the insert mode by pressing I. You press I and you get into the insert mode. What you can see at the lower left bottom in the screen, it's written insert over there. So now after your insert mode, it works almost as like any other text editor. So let's go. Now what's the whole pattern, how the fs tab operates, or how the fs tab takes entry? That's not a bit complicated, although for seeing it the first time it may be like, okay, it's something very advanced, it's something very tough. Well, once used to it, it doesn't feel like that way, because basically what fstab contains is, the first thing should be location of what to mount. Okay, so we have to mount /mnt /gfs /virs underscore sha underscore fol. Sorry. Okay, let me copy the whole path. It's pretty long of one. Shit. Okay. Sorry. Okay, it's done. Okay. Okay, so we copied it, and after that comes, okay, where you have to mount it. So let's say we have to mount it in okay, let's make a new directory. mkdir slash media slash yum. Okay. Now, on this, as I have told you in the previous video, mounting is not as copying. Mounting is just like, um, for those who have read, sorry, for those who have learned C, mounting is just like passing the memory address, the pointer to the operating system for where to, from where to find the data, from where we can actually, in the whole file system, can actually point the data towards. It's a bit of a complicated to explain right away right now, but just have patience. I'll be explaining it in a few video from now. So for now it's just mounting. Okay. So I'm making this new directory. It's in slash medias named yum, and after that what comes is file system. Now here is the thing. I What we are using right now is a ISO file, and ISO file is basically a ISO 9660 file system type. That's something you just have to mark it up. I mean, that's international standard organization made. It should be ISO 9660. There are few other types of ISO, that's ISO 9200 and other, but that's not point of concern for right now. We have to mount it on the loop device. Okay, so the next option should be the mounting option, and that should be what it holds is, sorry, am I doing it all right? Yep, I think so. Yeah, perfectly fine. Okay, so what mounting option means is that with what options you actually want to mount it. Now that's a bit of recursive, but it actually can hold up to 6 different options. A loop is an exception to that. Okay, so the first one is the default, that comes as in the file system will be mounted as read write. The SUID permission will be there. The slash dev, the slash dev, that's the directory for the devices, will be accessible to it, and other options. Okay, after that comes no auto. That's when mount hyphen a command is given, the file, this particular entry is not mounted. Then comes the user option in mounting. Okay, that's that's basically allow a particular file system to be mounted by a user. When you actually try to mount a new file system into the system, it only can be done by the root user, not by an ordinary user, or not by a normal user. So by specifying this particular option over here, you can explicitly allow normal users to mount this particular file system. That can be pretty handy when it comes to a whole full-fledged network-based scenario. And after that comes sorry okay, sorry. After that it comes comment, no fail, and owner. Now what these three are, the as stated, the owner option states that only the device owner can mount the particular file system. Comment is used by FS tab to maintain programs, and that's the FS tab's default entries. Okay. And no fail is about even while mounting the whole file system, even some error comes, it should not be reported back to the users, or it should not be echoed back on the screen. It should be just sent to some null device, and that's all about it. So let's, okay, as you can see in the bottom left corner, I've written with colon WQ, that's for write and quit, that's like save and quit in normal terms. Okay, so now everything's done. When I do mount -a, I know it will be mounted over there in slash media slash yum slash device slash loop is mounted, and that's what it shows over there. Okay, so now this entry can be met and can be written into the same file that we used last time. That's wim slash etc slash yum dot d, sorry, yum dot repo dot d, any file name you want with the extension repo. And over here after the second slash you can add your mount point over here. As for example, over here instead of slash media slash rhel 6.0 I 386 disk 1, I could have written slash media slash yum and it will work. If you don't believe it, let me show you it. Just a second, let me confirm if that's only, because what I fear is maybe in this case the disk name, the inside yum folder there can be another folder with the disk's name, so I'm just verifying if it's the case here or not. It seems not, but still let me check. No, it's not. So we can directly add this entry over here and voila, let's go. Sorry, yum list. Bingo, it worked. Okay, so that's how it works. And the last option, I mean the real last way of doing yum, as I've stated you that the yum is a whole server. Now what's the point of a server that only can work on a local system? There is no actual point of such a server, because uh, a server that only can respond back to a local system is almost of no use. It can be only used for testing purpose or for personal use. In a real scenario, or especially for in case of Linux, which is an network operating system, it's completely of no use. So I have actually pre-made this client system for you to show you how it can be used in a whole network based scenario. We'll be sorry What we'll be doing over here is that we'll be configuring the yum server to be accessible over the HTTP protocol, so that the client can access the yum server in the yum server at the server through the HTTP protocol. The same can be done with any other file sharing protocols also, except ISCSI and Samba. For those who are fearing what these names and the jargons are, uh, you need not to worry. I'll be explaining it further in the videos. But for now, just hold your horses. Okay, let us start. Okay, etho one. Sorry, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? I doubt and fear if it's working or not. Just wait up a little. Since just till then, let me check whether my each and everything is. Oh, sorry, each and everything is configured as should be. Okay, the yum server is working pretty good. Sorry, yeah, quit. Okay, the yum server over at the server is configured as it should be. Hopefully the client is ready. No, not yet. Still determining IP information for etho0. I mean eth0. That's taking quite of a time. Okay, for now just let's skip this part. I'll be showing it to you over the HTTP protocol and the local system only. You can test it at your home at your own risk. No, there's not any risk like that involved into it. So just for the instances, just for the instance, the default route or the document route for the HTTP server, the web server, is slash var, that is slash var slash www slash html. That's where by default the system looks for the web server or the HTTP servers file, that are the web files, the HTML pages and each and everything of your website. The server, the system looks at first over here. Okay, so I basically have already copied all the files into it. As you can see, rehl 6.0, each and everything is over in there. Now let's just copy it, and for instance let's just remove it. Then okay, here's a now shortcut. If for in case or for an instance you want to repeat or re-execute a particular command that you have executed in past, maybe some 5 or 10 commands earlier, and you want to re-execute it, but you are seriously not in a mood to write it all over again. So all what you can do is just write any of the starting any of the word from the command, starting from the starting order obviously. That's if I would have to write slash etc slash yum slash repo.dn blah 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 dub 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 dub. Simply could have done like exclamation v enter. It will open the same file. What it does is basically it re-executes your previous command, and that's all it does. Put an exclamation mark, the number for the command if you remember it, uh, the command till you wish to write it or till you remember it, enter, and the command will be executed without even prompting for whether it should execute or not. Okay, so the one thing that we will have to undo over here is that we will have to remove the file extension, because uh, till now what we were doing was to use the file protocol or the normal file system to access the contents or access the files for the web server. But right now we'll be using http, oh sorry, yeah, we'll be using http, shit. Okay. Okay, yeah, we'll be using the http protocol to do the same. So http 127.0.0.1 slash rhel and dub. Now what 127.0.0.1 is, it's the address for your local host. It's the address for your own system. If you send any packet to this particular IP address, the packet will be sent in a loop back to your system. So I'm using that address right now, so that when my system try to make a request to the web server, it the request is sent back to me at my system only. So if I do yum list bingo, the same thing happens, the yum server perfectly runs. Okay, so with that, I'd like to conclude yum server, and if you wish to explore more, that's your part of job, because as this is as far as for the functionality of yum server you'll be needing. So let's move forward with the web server or the HTTP server. Now before we move any further, or before we move sorry before we move on, I'd like you to know that the HTTP server or the hypertext transfer protocol server, it on by default runs on port 80. Now what port 80 is, that it's a virtual port on your system that it's used as a socket for another systems or the client over the network to connect over to your system. So basically it runs on port 80. The default configuration files for the web server will be /etc/httpd /conf/httpd.conf. Sorry. Okay. So this is a basic configuration file of the hypertext transfer protocol server. Now it may seem a bit of dangerous looking, kind of like a real tough looking technical kind of some file, and believe me, it is a pretty advanced kind of a file. It is something that you should be scared of, but not that much scared of, because we'll be learning what's into this, the whole thing. Okay, so we'll be going over pretty much of these lines, and we'll try to understand what this line means and each and everything. So just for the instance, just for now, you should remember this one particular path, that's /etc/httpd /conf/httpd.conf. That's httpd conf /httpd.conf. Okay, so this is the default for the directory configuration files. Any issues with the web server, you will have to, I mean, your way out is somewhere in here, so you know where to go. Okay, and apart from that, I like you to remember one more particular part regarding your web server, and that's war/www/html. That's the default document root, the place where the Apache web server tries to find its file. It's at by default. Okay, and we'll be basically operating from this folder only until unless we needed some folder else. Okay, so okay, as far as now what we have learned is how to configure a yum server, how we can configure some yum server over http. In the same way we can configure it over ftp, we can configure it over nfs, how we can configure a yum server directly from a cd drive, how can we configure it from a folder, how can we configure it from an ISO file. For web server, we have what we have learned till yet is how we can install a web server, how it looks when when it's executed, or it responds back. But till now we don't know how we can actually add up for a domain. I mean, I have a web server, but what a kind of a web server, or what's the use of a web server if I can't use it for a domain? If I can't add a domain to a web server, what's its use, right? So basically, adding domain is not such a bit of a tough work. All you have to do is go back at /etc/httpd/cnf/httpd.conf. We'll skip to the last line. Just copy these lines, get into insert mode, and sorry, bingo. Oops, sorry. Okay, I pasted the whole 7 lines back at the end, and I'll be using it very soon. So all you have to do to add a domain is uncomment this, let's say I'll be uncommenting this. Oh, sorry, this should be commented. Okay, uncomment this. Okay, so basically, this is the whole part where the basic or the core setting for your web server goes in. Now, sorry, the options that we can specify over here is well, what's the SMTP or the email address for the server admin, what's the document root where the web server will be looking for the files needed for this particular domain or this particular host. After that, what will be its name, the domain name. You will actually be specifying the real domain name over here. Okay, where the web server should store the error log, the logs that will be generated throughout its operation, where should it be stored, and by what name it should be stored. And after that, sorry, okay, and after that, if any kind of other log except from the error log, sorry, again, that's kind of a lot, has more dozens of sorry. Okay, leave it. Okay, apart from the error logs, there are certain other kind of logs, as for example the log for the clients that are successfully connected, the clients that I mean which clients made what request, and certain other things, all certain like thousands of things that goes over on a web server or website. All things are logged, and where to keep that logs can be specified over at custom logs. Now we'll be editing this according to our specified need. Let's say at the rate of sorry, that will be my server admin. That will be the contact for my server admin. Okay, for my server document root, I'll take it as sorry, no, HTML only. If you want, I can make it another directory. That's sorry, mkdir slash. Okay, so it's kind of like almost all configured. Let's change it to example.com only. Via should be adding the host name to it. Okay, so it's pretty done now. All what we have to do is restart the service, and to restart the service for the HTTP server or the web server is HTTPD. Now what the D in the name states is it's a daemon. Now questions for you guys is what is exactly a daemon? Sorry for the spelling mistake. Okay, so the HTTPD is it's the service name for the HTTP server. So we'll be basically restarting it. The command for that is service, sorry, that's caps lock is on, service HTTPD. It takes basically three it actually takes a whole lot of arguments, but the most used are three, actually two. That's service, service name, status. Yeah, the keyword status. Okay, that tells you the status for if if the particular service is running or it has been stopped, or apart from it, you can pass on the arguments like start, stop, restart, reload, etc., etc., etc. Refer to the man pages for if you want to get into deep and detail. I'll be using restart. Okay, what it says is that document root. Shit, idiot me. Sincerely apologize for my such uh sorry sorry. Sincerely I apologize for my such a idiotic behavior and mistake. Okay, let's try it one more time. Bingo. Okay, so now if we add, sorry, I didn't add. I did made a domain. I did made a particular domain. I provided it all the configuration it needed, but the basic thing, the index page, is missing. So I'll be making the index page cat slash more slash example.com. Oof, this crappy browser. Server cannot found. Example.com. Sorry. Example.com cannot be found. Okay, sorry. Again, very sorry. I completely messed it up. Okay, now you definitely can add this asterisk. Okay, but the problem is that my system is connected to a network right now, and I'm not a part of a whole domain. So what that create a problem? What the problem it basically creates is that the server doesn't know the DNS. The web server needs the DNS to access asterisk.example.com, and since it's unavailable, so it will show you that this particular thing is not available and hence server not found. And after that, let's go. Hopefully it works. Localhost. Now localhost.example.com is still not working. Why it's not working? Because I haven't restarted the service. And then if I try to restart the service, it doesn't. Oh, okay. It should not be the problem. Okay, and we have example.com. It's perfectly fine.